Welcome to the Cardinal News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit newsroom at cardinalnews.org. The Cardinal podcast is sponsored by Muneris, serving our communities with expert group benefits and Medicare solutions. I'm Dutchie Jessee, and today I'm going to be talking with a reporter who recently wrote an article for Cardinal about some interesting history down in Martinsville, in the south side part of our coverage area. A local historian in Southside Virginia found a curious trend looking through 100-year-old editions of the local paper. November 1924 was the month the KKK came to Martinsville to recruit during a time of resurgence for the Klan, and churches apparently welcomed them. Cardinal's Martinsville reporter, Dean Paul Stevens, wrote an article on this recently and joins us now. Hi, Dean. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dutchie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Dean, you talked with a Martinsville historian, a local resident there, who discovered how the Ku Klux Klan established a presence there via local churches, and we'll get into that specifically. But first, tell us about this historian. Who is she?
Yeah, her name is Holly Kosellski. She's the executive director of I always have trouble with the name of the organization. It's the Martinsville Henry County Historical Society. She's a director of that organization.
Yeah.
She writes a weekly, I believe, or bi-weekly column focusing on the history of the area. She essentially takes different materials from the Historical Society and other local sources, mostly newspaper clippings, if not like other like government-related documents, that sort of thing. And yeah, she writes whatever she finds interesting.
So she reached out to you and told you about this very interesting finding when she was looking back about 100 years. So what did she tell you she found?
Yeah, she originally reached out to me via email. She said that she found something that she thought would be interesting, and she told me that in her email she was a little bit vague. She said that she found some clippings about the KKK, and that really that was it. So maybe I read the email. I sent her back saying, "Oh, I'll speak with this to my editor." Which I did. At the time, we didn't really think that it was, a newsworthy sort of thing. But, I eventually reached out back to her again, maybe like, thinking maybe like a week later. And she gave me a bit more details, saying that, this is a part of the column that she writes. And, it's all came from various newspaper clippings from literally a century ago. So with the additional details I got, I thought that this was interesting and maybe it was a newsworthy topic to explore. So spoke with another editor, and we decided that I should reach out to her again and get more information and actually like do the story. Yeah, that's how the story got rolling.
Yeah, so she looks at old documentation from the history there, the local history down in Martinsville, and found newspaper clippings. What else was she going by when she stumbled upon this, I guess, this trend of local Klan groups trying to recruit specifically in Martinsville? What did she look at?
For this particular topic, it was all newspaper clippings.
Okay.
From what I understand from the work that she does, like the historical focus writing, you can't really trust a single source when it comes to, like actually like writing and saying that, this happened 150 years ago or whatnot. The main thing or the most ideal situation is once you do get a clipping or something that's saying that something happened is to reach out to someone who lived during that area, someone for which, the event is still a living memory. In this particular case, this was back in 1924, so a century ago. So that wasn't likely to happen. So the next best thing behind that is to find several other newspaper clippings or several other government documents to, I guess, corroborate the original thing that she found. And that's what she did. She looked at other newspapers clippings from that specific time frame, and she found that they were all reporting on this particular thing. So after finding that out, she was pretty confident that this did in fact happen. So yeah, she moved forward from there, gathering all the clippings that she could, and gathering all the information within the clippings, and she wrote, excuse me, she wrote about it.
Yeah. So the recruitment method, the tactics used by these Klan members trying to recruit
Mhm.
involved going to local churches. What does the history and the documentation and perhaps these newspaper clippings, what does it tell us? What was the strategy? How did it go about? Describe that.
Yeah. From what these newspaper clippings showed, churches was one of the, I guess you could say, the methods that the KKK used to reach out to people. Obviously there were like community organizations that were around back then, but churches specifically, I would probably say had the largest number of people that they could reach out to. It was the most effective means of reaching out to the highest number of people, because churches were probably a lot more popular back then compared to now. A lot more people go into Sunday service and whatnot. So they specifically chose churches, as a means to reach out to the folks here in Martinsville. And from what we were able to gather from the clippings, they were uh, pretty welcome among the majority of the churches. There was a sentence or two that we found were pretty interesting, uh, uh, like one or two churches. They, for whatever reason, they decided to not invite the K. They said that they could attend the churches, but they didn't let them, take the podium and speak to the congregants. But that was rare. The majority of the churches in this area were welcoming to the KKK's presence. I
So
should say
when,
of the white churches were.
yes, I started to ask that, and we'll get into that because your article has some very interesting, you did a little, research of your own or just talking to some different people as part of your article. So we'll get to that in a moment. But as far as going into these churches that did welcome them, what did that look like? Do we know? Was this, as you said, kind of taking part in the service, having some podium time to make a speech, like the case for joining the KKK? Or was this, what did it end up looking like?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. The pastor would introduce whoever the KKK member was, and they'd take to the podium. And what they would do, because there was one article that did, I guess, go into some detail about what they'd speak about. They didn't necessarily speak about, the Ku Klux Klan and white supremacy. A lot of times they would focus more on like the gospel. It would be like a Sunday service, almost like that, like they were the substitute pastor, if that makes sense. They focus a lot on the actual words of the scripture and whatnot. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, it would also entail them like giving gifts to whoever was hosting them. Like I believe one pastor received like a flag, or another one received like a special Bible, that sort of thing.
Hmm. And what do we know, again, per the documentation that Holly
Mhm.
found and that you've looked at, presumably, what do we know about the reaction from the congregation, from church leaders, community?
Mhm. I would say the from what was written, the reaction was fairly positive from the congregation. You know, this was back in the early-ish 1900s. The KKK, their reputation wasn't the same as it was, you know, in more modern times. A lot of the stuff that they advocated for were things that were in the mainstream. A lot of their
Mhm.
ideas were so. Yeah, they were pretty well received, you know, at the time.
So you earlier alluded to the fact that we had white churches and black churches at that time.
Mhm.
White churches seemed to welcome these recruitment efforts. So what was going on in the black churches while was it known that this was, you know, KKK was doing this? And what do you know about that from what either Holly uncovered or you followed up with?
Yeah, that one is a bit more murky.
Okay.
I can't imagine how or why, you know, black churches wouldn't have been aware that, you know, the KKK was making an overture in Martinsville. But as far as the reaction among black churches, the reporters at the time didn't really prioritize that. And so there really isn't, I couldn't find any, and Holly couldn't find any, you know, stories or any sort of clippings or anything that mentioned anything about, you know, black pastors, black church congregants, or you know, their reaction to the KKK coming to Martinsville. Yeah, there really isn't a lot of information specifically about that.
Um, if you can, because I know you had to do a little bit of research for this article and kind of you have to know the context of what was going on in 1924. So can you tell us a little bit about that in terms of the KKK in general as a nationwide movement at that time, or
Mhm.
specific to what was happening there in Southside Virginia? What do you
Mhm.
know about that time that you could help that would make sense of this?
Yeah, I would say the KKK coming to Martinsville, that coincided a lot with what was happening around the country.
Mhm.
You know, I wrote in the article that the popularity, for lack of a better word, for the KKK sort of ebbed and flowed throughout the
Mhm.
decades. In 1924, specifically, the popularity of the KKK was on the rise. um, you know, there was a lot of writings from folks like Marcus Garvey and other individuals who preached about, you know, who I guess you could say they categorized the idea of white supremacy, you know, in their writing and, you know, speaking to African Americans at the time,
Mhm.
saying that like, none of this is right, this isn't okay, and to simplify some of their writings. But yeah, that I guess you could say that's sort of concerned uh, people for whom uh, people who are, I guess you could say, who are invested in white supremacy, sort of concerned them, and that sort of led to folks, you know, joining organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, and you know, the Ku Klux Klan, you know, managing to bolster their numbers nationwide around that time, and why they decided that it was, I guess, worth it to go out to like some of the smaller towns to, you know, bolster their numbers and that sort of thing.
You know, your article, I encourage everyone to read it at cardinalnews.org and look for Dean's byline. There's a really disturbing, stark image. It's an image of an ad that you came across in this article, and I'm going to share it here, although um, I do encourage people to read the article as well. Let me get this guy out of the way. I mean, Dean, you know, when I saw this in your article, are you a member of the Ku Klux Klan? If not, why? This was really something I had never seen an ad like this before. You know, it says if you are 100% American, believing in the Christian religion, separation of church and state, law and order, and the maintenance of white supremacy, And then it gives you, hey, fill out this form and you might gain admission to the Klan. That is it's kind of chilling to see that.
Mhm.
Was this the first time you saw something like this, was in researching this article?
Yes, it was. Again, you have to remember that a lot of the things that the Klan preached at this particular time was part of the mainstream, and
Right,
people wouldn't be as disturbed seeing
right.
this as they would today. But this was the first time I saw like a newspaper ad just outright, advertising the Klan like this. And I believe Holly probably saw this ad as well when she was doing her research for what she wrote. But yeah, I was on the newspaper dot com archives, and
Mm-hmm.
I had just typed in the Ku Klux Klan in the search, and Martinsville, Henry County, and I believe this was in the uh, I don't think it was in the Martinsville Bulletin. I believe it was another paper that I don't think exists anymore.
Okay.
Um, but it was a local paper that this was.
Yeah. It says Martinsville, Virginia, and what they want is the
Yeah,
name, age, business address, phone, business address, then phone, and then residence address and phone, your business or occupation. It's
yeah,
fascinating. And you're right. And you point this out in your article, and I believe Holly mentioned it, Dean, which is, well, it was a different time. We're looking
yeah.
at it in a rear view mirror going, oh, how horrible, just like a lot of things in our
Mhm.
history. But still, to see that image, it was quite telling.
Yeah.
As part of this article, you then talked to some people in the community now, some Black leaders, and I believe they were church leaders. If I'm misspeaking, correct me. But who did you
Yeah,
talk to,
yeah.
and what kind of conversation was that?
Yeah, reached out to some people and some reached out to me. I spoke with Sharice Hairston. She's the director of the Fahey African American Museum here in Martinsville. Also spoke with Tyler Milner. He's the pastor at Morning Star Holy Church.
Mhm.
And another pastor, John Adams. He's with the First Galilee Missionary Baptist Church. And they had a lot of insights. One thing that all three of them actually agreed on without speaking with each other was they said that even though the KKK probably wouldn't be able to I guess, come to Martinsville and do what they did back then. That I guess, the sentiment behind
Mhm.
the KKK and their message, that sentiment still exists to this day, not just in Martinsville, but throughout the country. That was one thing that they all agreed on. They said that people don't wear robes anymore. They might wear suits and ties, but the sentiment, it's still there.
Yeah. What else did you end up talking with them about, these now modern day leaders in the Black community in Martinsville?
Yeah. Another thing that we spoke about was how there really wasn't a lot of documentation coming from Black churches at the time, and they said that they're not too surprised about that either. That I guess the opinions of Black people in general, well, yeah, in general, and Black churches and specifically Black congregants, it probably really just wasn't a priority
Mhm.
for reporters at the time. Most probably wouldn't have seen it as an oversight or anything like that because I suppose they already knew how Black people felt about the KKK coming into their community and being welcomed
Mhm.
the way they were, among their neighbors and that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, they essentially said that it's disturbing and it probably wouldn't happen today, but you never know.
Right. Well, it was a very interesting article, and I do encourage anyone who hasn't read that yet, please go to cardinalnews.org and you'll find Dean's story there. Dean Paul Stevens covers Martinsville for us. And Dean, I just appreciate your work and thank you for sitting down on this particular story. I always like to end with letting our listeners know how they could reach out to you if they wanted to learn more about this or have a story idea for you. What's your email address?
You can always email me at Dean, DEAN, at thecardinalnews.org. And I'm perfectly fine with you calling. Is it okay for me to give my number out?
Sure.
I don't know if I already, yeah. Always feel free to call me 276-618-6609.
There's no shortage of news down in Martinsville, where I say down because I'm up a little further north in the Roanoke Valley, but that's part of our Cardinal News coverage area. So we appreciate your coverage and we'll have you back on the podcast again for the next story. And thank you again. And Dean Paul Stevens covers Martinsville, and we are paywall free at cardinalnews.org. Thank you for listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia. Thanks to our sponsor, Muneris. Also want to thank our own Zach Shelton for his technical support. I'm Dutchie Jessee for Cardinal News.
From Red Oak to Greenville, Bluefield to Orange, and Gold Vein to Silver Beach, the Virginia Press Room features the voices of Virginia's press corps from every corner of Virginia. The podcast is a joint production of the Virginia Public Access Project and VPM News. Get the top headlines of the week and the inside scoop on Virginia politics when our top reporters open their notebooks and tell us the story behind the story. New episodes every Monday morning.